week with my co-producer Marty Winkle. We're going to talk about the Astronaut Hall of Fame festivities this weekend on the Space Coast. And we've got a couple of items of space history that are a little bit unique today, where Russia threw in the towel, saying that if Apollo 10 was successful in May 1969, they knew they would be beat to the moon. And a little bit of history about NASA considering flying pigs in space. But let's kick right off here by thanking GoHistoryTravel.org for their support of the American Space Museum and Stay Curious. We've made some good friends there with Ram and his wife Mal and son Bharat. And you'll be GoHistoryChannel.org. You're going to see a nice little newsletter that they put together from their trips around the world. Some very obscure places, and we'll be featuring those occasionally on Stay Curious future shows. But let's get to the birthdays there, Marty. Put my birthday hat on here. We've got the Atlantis behind us here and the throng at the Astronaut Hall of Fame there. Okay, Marty says don't touch any keys. If we go offline, we're having a few little glitches still that we're trying to correct. So if you'd advance it for me, Marty, we're going to wish happy birthday to 64th birthday to Tamara Jernigan. And Tamara, Elizabeth Tammy Jernigan.
You can advance. Let me just do 3 and 4.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go forward here. Happy birthday to Tammy Jernigan, born May 7th, 1959 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and a veteran of 5 space shuttle flights. She's a graduate, though she was born in Chattanooga. She grew up in Santa Fe Springs, California, attended Stanford, was a NASA astronaut from 86 to 2001. Her missions were STS-40, 52, 67, 80, and 96, 63 days in space. There she is with her husband, Jeffrey Wissoff, also an astronaut. They both work at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California, involved with weapons and complex integration type of things. So this is after Wissoff's flight to space. Give him a big hug, Tammy is on the runway. And I just got one picture of her. There we are. Thought I had one of her in space. But her birthday was Sunday. Happy 64th birthday to Tammy Jernigan. We saw her crewmate on STS-96 today, which was her last flight. And that, of course, being Julie Payette. So another happy birthday to this gentleman, Charlie Camarda. Is 71 today. Charles Joseph Charlie Camarda was born May 8, 1952 in Queens, New York, and his only mission was STS-114 to return to flight mission of Discovery in 2005. He was in that gigantic astronaut class called the Sardines, where 44 of them were recruited in 1996. Camarda is a very... he works at Langley Research Centers where he started out, and he developed some thermal protection systems for the shuttle. Also holds some patents, and quite an innovator. He continues to work for NASA until his retirement, pioneering what they call the engineering pedagogical approach called EPIC that explores how to develop a mission as a collaborative training project. So happy birthday to Charlie Camarda. There he's in his orange suit there. Here he is, the way he looks today from Queens. He's all over New York representing the space program there. Of course, New York City is where Enterprise is docked on the Intrepid aircraft carrier. So, well, an interesting side point of space history that I have always enjoyed bringing up may have something to do with the Pink Floyd album Animals from about 1976 in there. And the idea is, could pigs fly in space? Pigs on a Wing, Part 1, a song off that Animals album by Pink Floyd. What am I getting at here? No, not a Pink Floyd song, but did you know NASA was considering using pigs as test subjects in space? They absolutely were. Here's even a drawing of a pig in a Mercury capsule, as you see here. Well, that idea was nixed in 1959 on May 6th. So this week in space history in 1959, NASA said, nah, no pigs in space. We're going to use chimpanzees. Now, why would they use pigs? Because, as I understand it, anatomically, the insides are more like humans than any other creature. So, but there you see a pig up in the upper right on its own reentry couch, if you will. There it is inside. They were going to use the Little Joe rocket to test subjects, particularly their ability to withstand the gravity forces of a launch. McDonald did use a pig Gentle Best to test the impact crushability support, and the test was successful. And there's a National Pig Day, by the way, Marty, in case you were wondering, is March 1st. So you might think that we'll be revisiting Pigs on the Wing in space, maybe March 1st there. But one of those, wow, really? NASA was really considering that? And there's a drawing and everything. And they actually had a formal meeting to nix it this month in 1959. Well, another thing I love talking about, of course, is the race to space between the USA and the USSR. And here is what it would have looked like had Russia landed on the moon. And on this date, May 8th, 1969, 2 Soviet space leaders and 3 government officials in charge of the moon race had a press conference and privately, well, behind closed doors, it wasn't a press conference, they admitted that America was going to beat them to the moon. Soviets needed at least 2 more years to reach the moon in May 1969, and Apollo 10 was on the launch pad ready to launch on May 18th on the full dress rehearsal, except the landing. And if they knew if that was a success, that America would try and probably successfully land on the moon in July 1969. So secretive was the Soviet moon program that we could not even see pictures like this as what they were going for until the 1980s, almost 20 years later after the moon race. What were they going to do? Well, here is a replica of what they call the LK-1 lunar module, basically. And there you see a gentleman standing up at the hatch that was going to... That's actually a downward-looking... not a hatch, but it's a downward-looking window. Much like the lunar module windows were tilted down to look out, there's the window for the Russian lunar module. It was going to be one man was going to land on the moon while the other cosmonaut was orbiting in the Zond spacecraft, a Soyuz spacecraft. It was thought that it takes 2 hours to orbit the moon one time, so they thought that the astronaut could land, scoop up some samples, get back in, and maybe just one orbit blast off for the return trip to the Earth there. This is what it was going to look like in artist rendering. Of course, the Soviet flag being planted there. Certainly they wouldn't have landed where there were mountains like that, like we landed in the flattest areas we could find. There was a man named Sergei Korolev that was the chief designer of Russia's space program, and they were so secretive that his name was not even revealed until the 1980s, and yet he died in 1966 during gallbladder surgery, and this was a big blow to the Soviet Union because Sergei Korolev was their equivalent to Wernher von Braun and a bunch of others mixed in there, and he was working on their N-1 rocket, their equivalent to the Saturn V. There were other Russian men involved, leaders, but they knew that Sergei Korolev was the great designer, they called him. And like I said, he died in 1966. He was not even revealed to who he was until the 1980s. He had quite a life, actually was a prisoner of war in Russia and so forth. And Wernher von Braun didn't even know who was in charge in Russia of all these players. And but at this meeting, they knew that America, if they were successful, we're going to beat them to the moon. And that was not so much of a scientific blow as it was a blow to their ego and their whole psyche of wanting the world to think that communism was the way. They were the great explorers. They had all these fantastic Russian space spectaculars that a lot of them were near-death experiences for the cosmonauts that we found out later. What Korolev, the great designer, took to his grave was that this lunar lander was 20 tons too heavy for the N-1 rocket, and he thought that he could get some way to do it, but the end result was 4 launch failures of their N-1 rocket, and the project was canceled completely 5 years after Apollo 11 landed on the moon. So Russia threw in the towel on this date in 1969 that America was going to win the moon race with Apollo 10, going to orbit the moon and go down within 9 miles of the moon. And of course, it was a successful mission. They were hoping it wasn't. And so, all right, Marty, thank you. I got his note there. It's okay to go between our Streamlabs keys here. So, but remember, space history, folks. It is what we're trying to relive. 50 years later, we've not been on the moon, and as they keep talking about it, we're pushing it back to 2026 now. So hope Artemis works out, and hope it's a great experience again. Well, there's the throng in the background of the people beneath our orbiter Atlantis that's up in the sky so beautifully. I can take that off there as we were using this as our backdrop there. To the left is a screen over there, the astronauts podium, and all of the space geeks, myself, Marty included. We had Connie McDaniel was there with us, our great volunteer. We had Bill Whiting, and Bart Martindale was there with us too. So we had a good time. There was plenty of room. Even though you didn't buy a ticket, you could get in free in the peanut gallery seats. But those peanut gallery seats were pretty close, Marty.
Yeah.
We had a good seat there, as good as anybody there. And quite a festivity. My first time to experience this kind of start to finish, including helping out the artist Chris Calley with some of his works of art that he needed a man servant like myself to help him get around. Chris, I know you're watching. Hope you're feeling better and got safely back home. Despite Marty's little extra scenic route that you took there, Marty, you told me there. He just had to see a little bit more of Orlando, didn't he? Joking with Marty there. All right. Well, of course, we had the induction, and thank you, Carlton Bailey, for these pictures. We featured pictures from Mark Usiak on our Facebook page that you can see. Thank you, Mark, for letting us share those. Hope you made it safely back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We'll see a picture of you coming up here in a minute. But Roy Bridges and Senator Mark Kelly, really deserving. It was interesting to hear how, though Roy Bridges only has one flight, I can see why he's in the Hall of Fame. He had a lot to do, Marty, with the way that they tailored the astronauts, and when a disaster happened, what they did with the families. And he had that all planned out before Challenger happened, and they didn't do it. Basically having an astronaut assigned to the family and having all the protocol worked out in case you had to do it. And they didn't do what Roy wanted to do as an astronaut, and yet after the Challenger, they endorsed his way. So, of course, he was the director of Kennedy Space Center for nearly 7 years. Mark Kelly, 4 flights. And let's look at some of these pictures that CB got us there. There's their pose picture they had with the media there. And they give him, of course, they're in the Hall of Fame on a plastic portrait you're going to see that's backlit. And but there's a beautiful medal there. And we're going to see that medal up close here in just a second. There's the astronauts that were Hall of Famers that were in attendance. Marty, they said this was 107 it makes in the astronaut class now. Bridges and Kelly being put in there. I'm not going to name them all left to right up there, but there was about 17 astronauts there, and you know many of them in there, and it was great to see, particularly Joe Kerwin is in the middle of the back. He's 91 years old. And great to see Bob Crippen in the lower right there. So and there is, thank you, CB, for taking a nice close-up of that. I wasn't exactly sure. I didn't get a good close gander of that, but that's a nice little profile of an astronaut in space there. I like it. And, of course, this is the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, founded by the original Mercury astronauts. They're friends of our museum. And there is Mr. John Zarella, Master of Ceremonies, praying. Rare time that you can see him summoning the Lord. No, he was not summoning the Lord. He was saying hello to the people up above that were looking down from the second floor up there, right next to the beautiful Atlantis spaceship that I hope you've all come out and seen there. Great job, Mr. John Zarella. As usual, he is what they call the ultimate Master of Ceremonies for the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation's Hall of Fame induction. And there's Mr. Roy Bridges making a point. Excellent photograph there, CB. Then got Mark Kelly doing the same thing, talking about their families, thanking their friends and families along the way, putting up with what they have to do as an astronaut, basically just shut the world off and focus to attain their goals. Once they become an astronaut, that's just the beginning. They could easily wash out, and they know that the competition's great for all these missions. So our wonderful shuttle astronauts, here they are inducted into our Hall of Fame. And that is, if you've never been there, these are lucite or some sort of acrylic material that they put their likeness on, and then they're illuminated beautifully from behind. So can't wait to see those up our next visit, Marty, when we go in. And we've shown you pictures of the Hall of Fame with the great Alan Shepard statue there in the middle of it. It's just a fabulous, fabulous thing. Well, I want to end the program today by sharing with you a great astronaut encounter that many of us, Marty was out there today. This is Julie Payette, the Canadian astronaut that was also the Governor General or she's like the Vice President of Canada for several years. And this was her first time to come out to the astronaut encounter. We've gotten quite familiar with everybody out there, Marty, as you well know. So with a lot of us that go out there and get autographs on a steady basis, it's kind of a little clique of groupies, if you will. And we knew, talking to Julie, because she had to shadow one of the astronauts, being her first time out there, and with Nick Thomas and Mark Smith as the two astronaut wranglers out there. So we saw quite a bit of her, and she was nervous, Marty. She didn't know how well her program would go over, quite nervous, but she did an outstanding job. And there she is on stage. There's Mark Smith taking a picture of our one and only great volunteer, Anita Truex, there with Julie Payette. Very proud Canadian, boy, I'll tell you. She got the Canadian stuff in all over, and there's a good group of Canadians watching today. And today watching us on Stay Curious, Mark UCX watching. He made it home okay. Carlton Bailey, thank you for sharing your artwork with us. Tom UCX watching in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Dave Stange, we're grateful to Dave as well as everyone that's contributed financially to the American Space Museum. Thank you for your contribution, Dave. Gary Gerald, Bill Whiting's watching. Bill, you're coming up here. Let's look at old Bill there just a second. There's Julie talking again with Connie in the background, our ace volunteer, and Anita. They work great together on keeping our merchandise up to date and displayed beautifully. And there's Bill Whiting on the right. He is a Canadian, and he had Julie's official government portrait photo there she's holding, talking to him about.
Bill has dual citizenship.
And Bill has dual citizenship. All right, Marty, thank you. He's an American and a Canadian. I think she's showing Bill here that she was wearing her astronaut pin on her formal Canadian portrait there. So always good to see Bill. He's going back up to Canada and went greening up there for Canada and Michigan. He's up there at the Windsor, Ontario, Michigan border. Melissa Pope's watching today. There I am. Got to brag once in a while that we love our astronauts, and She's a great one. Cynthia Rossi was at the induction with us there. It was great to see Cynthia. Doug Forrest. Tammy's also another one that we saw that hangs out with us. Doug Forrest. Doug, Marty, that is one of the prettiest things to get signed that you're getting signed. Is Marty's getting signed your head-on shot of Endeavor, I think it is. And boy, does that look pretty with all the signatures around it there, Doug Forrest. Robert Law's watching. Chris Callie, thumbs up to you, buddy. The Code Blue Collective. And Hazel Banks is watching. Thank you, Hazel. Let's get together here on the Space Coast soon. Yeah, Marty.
And Chris Cowley's saying me too, meaning he was at the induction.
Yes, he was. He certainly was. All right, so there's talking about Julie there. We had a great time with her. She's going to be out there the next couple of days. I think I'm going to go out there and get some more stuff signed.
Just tomorrow.
Oh, she's just there tomorrow? Oh, okay.
It's a 3-day thing.
Okay. Well, I will definitely get out there tomorrow because I have something for her to sign. They only limit you to 3 things to sign during the day, and that's okay. They sign it at noon and at 4 o'clock in the Atlantis building. So, great hit was Julie Payette there, and we know she's had some controversy. Those of you that have read about her tenure in Canada, but you know what? She was way friendly and wonderful to deal with, and went to the top of the top 5, didn't she, Marty?
Yeah.
With some of our favorite astronauts we've seen out there, and we've probably seen 50 of them now. Well, we just wanted to give a little shout out about the shuttles of May. The 10 beautiful shuttles in the month of May launched, and we're going to detail more of them as we go throughout. The maiden flight of Endeavor was over the weekend. That's flying proudly in 1992, 31 years ago. We've coming up is the Hubble's last service mission. We're going to launch it May 11th in 2009. We had Mark Kelly that we put in to the Hall of Fame. He was the commander of STS-134. All right. And Lista Della Porta's watching. Thank you, Lista, for watching Stay Curious there. Let me get a little drink there. And they had the Kibo module here at the end of the month. I love the month of May. And we had 10 beautiful shuttles of May. And right here in front of me, we had, I was going to look, I think 65 astronauts were on the shuttle, 11 of them women, okay? And 5 of them were repeats of the flight there. So we got the rest of the month to share those with you. We loved, I put this chart together with my boss, Karan Conklin, to juxtapose, and we're going to look about the 20th, when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 space shuttles orbiting the Earth in history, years apart from in the middle of the month here. So we'll talk about those, and I'd love to juxtapose the missions, some of the astronauts, and so forth. So good stuff that we like bringing you like no other, the history of our 30-year awesome space shuttle program. Reminded me that Wednesday we're going to have Terry White on to talk about the tail mast sections there. Those are those gray dominoes right there underneath Endeavor's wings. What are those? What were they used for? Marty Winkle knows because he worked on the space shuttle. But we're going to have Terry White, the garage manager for the orbiters, tell us exactly what those tail service masts are all about and how important they were to our wonderful space transportation system. So, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, GoTravel.org. Hope that you've enjoyed this episode as we kick off another week of Stay Curious. Please tell your friends to watch us on YouTube as we monetize that. We're also got our start on Facebook as we are now entering our 811th episode is in the can, Marty, and we're so grateful to all of you out there wanting more so that we can present you this program. Marty, Streamlabs went pretty smooth there, so we're grateful for that. We had to touch base with Trekkie Techie Jessica Galloway. Thank you for being there for us to help, and thank you all for watching today. And Remember that we are open Monday through Saturday here on the Space Coast in beautiful downtown Titusville, just 9 miles away from the launch pads at Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force, 3 blocks away from our one-of-a-kind Space View Park, the only place in the world you can put your handprints in bronze on over 30 American astronauts. So until we do it again tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to stay curious and bridge the space between us.